All right, Mark, take it away.
Oh, thanks, Bob. I would say one of Frederick's power couples here, Carlo, Lynn.
Hey.
Thanks for coming, and Lynn especially for what you're gonna. You know, Lynn's interesting. She retired mortgage banker, started flying in '01, I believe it was, and man, has she been active ever since. I mean, Carlo, of course, has a fleet of aircraft. Lynn's got her own small fleet. She teaches. She's an instructor. She teaches with Bravo. She contracts to AOPA for teaching. I'm certainly not going to steal her thunder about the air race, but needless to say, wow, really impressive credentials. Thanks very much for coming. Please help me welcome Lin Caywood.
I'll stand over here. Hopefully you guys can hear me. If not, I'll stand over that way. So there I am. So thanks for the introduction, Mark. So I have flown this Air Race Classic. If you guys haven't heard about it, I think I might have presented a couple years ago before the 2017 race that we started here. But this race has been around in some form or fashion since 1929. So it's the old Powder Puff Derby. In 1977, the organization that runs it now took it over. So I'm currently the vice president of the organization. I was a safety officer for 5 or 6 years. Now I'm what they call the start and terminus liaison. So I work with our folks who run the start of the race and the end of the race, because we have events and briefings and stuff like that at both ends. So I brought some of my bling to show you too. So out of the 11 races I've flown, they were only giving top 10. We changed the kind of the placings this year because we split out the college teams from the competition teams and traditional age teams. And out of the 11 races, I've done 10th, 5th, 2/3, and then this year I got 4th. So hope still chasing that elusive first or second. So lots of leg prizes too. We'll talk about those. So I mentioned 1929 was the first race. Louise Thaden actually won it. Then, as you know, she went on and won the Bendix Trophy, and then they decided women couldn't fly in the Bendix anymore. But they had 2 classes. Most of these planes were donated by the manufacturers. They did have one fatal. That's the only bad accident since the running of this race. The only time this race hasn't run every year is 2 years during World War II. During the oil embargo, I think it was 74. And then COVID got us for 20 and 21. Other than that, we've had a race every year. So, and Amelia Earhart, by the way, came in 4th place. But at the end of that race in Cleveland, went from Santa Monica to Cleveland, the women decided that they needed a support group. So they formed the 99s, which I'm the governor of the Mid-Atlantic section. I can't stop volunteering for things. So, but that's how that organization, which is the, I guess, the female version of the QBs. So here's our mission for the Air Race Classic. So we do run a youth event at the start and the terminus to try and get the public out there, usually Girl Scout groups we engage with. But we really, really want to make sure that we promote this race as really a safe and fun thing for the women to do. Our collegiate class is really what we are pushing for. It's educational. We have people that have never flown their plane full throttle. We've had people that have never flown more than 25 miles away from their home airport, except for with an instructor. So it's very, very rewarding. And we always say that if you start the race and you're a wind weenie or a weather weenie, you're not by the time you get done, because it can get intense. There's kind of, I broke it down into 3 types of air racing. So you guys are familiar with the NASCAR the skies, the fly fast, turn left kind of thing that they do at Reno now, someplace else. But then there's the rally races. There's a big one up in California, the Haywood Rally. There's Okie Derby. There's some other prediction kind of races where you might even be looking for things on the ground, scavenger hunts, things like this. The one on the right, we'll talk a little bit more about it at the end. But we now run a derby in the fall that I want to talk to you guys about because it's not limited just women. So it's men are allowed to be in that one, and it's a choose your own adventure. It's a one-day kind of event, so it's a lot of fun, and I want to challenge you guys to fly that. These are some of the courses that were built for the last one we did. The winner, I think, was from New Zealand, so they fly all over the world. The race that I compete in is the Air Race Classic, like I said, and it's a handicapped race. So what we do is we fly a box at 6,000 feet density altitude. They use Gray's algorithm to calculate our average speeds, flying cardinal headings, and then you're given that speed to beat. So you have to beat your own speed. Of course, we're looking at everybody else's strategy to see what they're doing. A couple people said our strategy is to follow Lin Caywood. I usually tell them that's not a really good strategy, but it's fun, and the course changes every year. So it's not like you can like plan and then try and redo it. So you have to really be on your game. This year's course was here, starting in Carbondale, Illinois, and it ended up in Loveland, Colorado. And so it was a lot of fun. I'll talk some more about that. Then I just have a picture of weather and winds. So in this box is kind of a depiction of what we do. So we're looking for calm, usually early morning. Night flights are good for the handicap, but we need some good calm winds, steady winds really. This is kind of showing each airplane being assigned a handicap and then how we score. So you get your handicap assigned to you in miles per hour. Then they take the elapsed time of the entire race, what your average speed was for that elapsed time, minus any penalties, and then that's or add any plus any penalties, and then your score against your handicap. So normally this is about right. You know, most of the teams are usually right at net. This year, though, I think our winner was at 6 miles per hour, and I think I came in just under 4. All right, so who races? So we've got, you know, everybody, doctors, lawyers. My partner one year was a Pulitzer Prize writer that is now on a book tour with her first book. But we've got everybody, all ages. The youngest is 18 that raced this year. The oldest was 95. This lady here, Mama Carastro, she was 95 this year when she raced. So, and she still flies the plane too. She just doesn't sit there. It's pretty amazing. This is mother, daughter, her niece, but the granddaughter. So, and this is my race partner. The last, not last year, but the 22 and 23. Mary Wonder, she's a retired air traffic controller from Philly. So she can work wonders making radio calls, getting us into airspace that nobody else can get into. So a lot of, we do have airline pilots. This lady here flies for Southwest. Lots of college teams, some great diversity. This year we had 22 what we now call intercollegiate teams and representing 19 schools. So great interest. These kids can get college credit. So this is a picture of the intercollegiate group. This is the year, and this was 2018, I think, when we were down in Sweetwater, Texas, home of the Wasp. And these ladies, this represents the 22 teams that we had that year too. So last year we matched that record. And these young ladies, it really looks good on their resume too. But again, it's very educational. They have never flown outside of a Part 141, very highly structured program. So some of them are thrown out on their own. Some of them have a weather team, a dispatch team, all kinds of stuff, a lot of ground support that the I hate to say the adult class, but the competition class doesn't have. So I do have a very great weather guy that helps me out. But these teams, that's why we split them off, because they have a very unique situation.
Lynn, where are you in that picture?
Oh yeah, I graduated from college a few years after that one. So we also started a new class last year called EDMA, Electronic Data Monitoring Aircraft, with that. With like G1000, if you put an SD card in and give us flight tracks, we're starting to use that. The colleges have deals with Lycoming, and they can't fly those engines full throttle. They have like a 5-minute max continuous, or they're scared of going over the red line, because if Lycoming gives them those engines, and then if they exceed and they look at their data cards, then they don't get free engines anymore. So this has really taken off. We've been able to integrate it into the intercollegiate class, and they fly 2 handicaps at 2,500 and 2,600, and then they fly the race at like 2,550. It's really quite interesting. It's going to be kind of the wave of the future. We hope to introduce it into the competition class as well once we vet it out. But right now, just the planes that a couple of the big universities use, we have vetted out. But anything that is stock or modified stock, it can be twin engine, max horsepower 300 aside, so 600 total, minimum of 100. We did have a Cub or a 150 that tried to race one year, and they had to stop and get fuel a few times, one time in a field. So we don't allow, that's where we put the limitations on. We had a Luscombe though race last year. They came in 10th place. So they had some very different strategy, but they made it. All right, here's some routes. Like I said, we do different routes every year. We have a very accomplished, fantastic person that helps us with that. I get the start and the terminus, and then she builds the route out. And the route's about 2,500 miles, give or take a little bit. The first leg of each route, this one started in Jackson and worked its way down and ended up in Canada. That was in 2019, ended up in Canada. This one from 2014 went from Concord, California, up to Harrisburg. York was the final timing point, but Cap City is where we ended up, and that was a true kind of coast to coast. Then 2017, when we started in Frederick, we ended up in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and that was a pretty tough one too. 2023, we started up in Grand Forks, up at UND, made our way all the way down to Homestead, Florida. And talk about hot, that one was toasty. But the funny thing is, Grand Forks one day was warmer than they were in Miami, and their runways are prepared for very, very cold conditions. They have 2 runways up there, parallel runways. One of them buckled, their main runway buckled from the heat, and it took them 2 weeks to repair it. So they weren't used to those conditions. We had the same problem in Loveland this year too, Loveland, Colorado. They had some buckling in the runway because they weren't used to the heat. So
It's always in late June?
it's always the 3rd week of June. Usually the summer solstice is that week. So we can have, it's a day VFR race. We have set our own kind of sunrise and sunset to help the volunteers. So it's 6:30 in the morning is the first time you can take off. You can turn your engine over before then, but you can't launch till 6:30. And then 8:30 p.m. in the evening is our sunset, and you have to be on the ground within 30 minutes. And we have had people, we had one cross the timing line at like 8:29 and 16 seconds or something last year. So someone cut it close. But it makes a big difference. It's 4 days. The race usually starts on a Tuesday and ends on Friday at 5 p.m. And so your strategy is when you're going to take off and what you're going to do. And I'll talk about this year's race and how that worked. This is next year's race. And you can see the dates there. We're going to start down in Fairhope, Alabama, over near Mobile. and end up in Spokane, Washington. So another good long route. This Rock Springs, Wyoming is going to be very strategic. The winds pick up there. The density altitude's pretty tough there. So I think some people are going to be spending the night there. We were worried about that this year too, but Loveland's, I mean, they are at 5,000 feet, but it wasn't too bad. All right. I'm going to talk about this, and then I'll go into some details of 2024 and how that went for me. So what we do, like I said, is at the start, everybody gets there a little early. If they haven't handicapped, we'll handicap them, or if we had trouble getting them a handicap, we re-handicap them. There's me in order. We all kind of line up in race order. If you guys were here in 2017, you kind of remember that. We clean up the plane, do some inspections, and you can see here we bring, I don't know if you're familiar with AWOM, which is the Association for Women Aircraft Mechanics. They're part of Women in Aviation International. They provide teams, support teams to us, and then we use local volunteers to help as well. They do precursory, they torque strike the mags, the prop governor. They'll look at the engine just to make sure nothing's dripping or falling off out of it. We've seen some strange stuff when people show up. We do check credentials. We look at everybody's logbooks to make sure they meet our minimums. You have to either have 100 hours to be a co-pilot, PIC, or to be PIC you need 500 hours PIC or an instrument rating. So, but to sit in the back, you only need 5 hours in a fixed wing, can be student pilot. So could be training. So my mother actually flew in the back seat with me in 2016. So she had a blast. She's got 8 hours in the logbook, so she's legit. But we check everybody to make sure that not just the pilot, but the airplane, like I said, credentials are good. That takes a day. We do a bunch of briefings. Some are FAA required. We do have a waiver, and we carry a waiver, but it's only for the high-speed passes that we do for high-density flights within the airport environment. Other than that, we don't have any other FAA waivers, so you have to follow all the FARs. And folks have been busted a few times for not flying at the right altitudes. So this was kind of just an example of, I do the start and terminus briefing, so we build out some slides, show them where the timing line is, because that's important, so they can keep their own timers, whatever stopwatch, whatever they're using. Everything is timed with a bad elf now, though. Everybody carries a bad elf. We are looking for some additional equipment or potentially new bad elf stuff because they're stopping to support the ones that we have for the race. We also carry spot trackers, so the public can watch us. And this is down here. This is hard to see, but this is Map Progress provides some kind of mapping program for us that we hook all of our spots to, and then we can put profiles in there with everybody's information. See, I'm down there in the middle. That was this year's race. This was also this year's race. So we took off. The weather kind of came in along the lake. We ended up in Cadillac, Michigan. A lot of people stayed in Cadillac the first night. We opted to take a hit on the winds because we thought that we could beat some weather coming down from Canada in the next couple of days from a strategy perspective. It did really pay off for us because when we got down to Dodge City, the next to last stop, we did want to get out of Dodge. We love saying that, but we couldn't get out of Dodge. We ended up staying, having a nice steak dinner, and leaving the next morning, and those winds kind of dried up, and they ended up being headwinds for some of the other teams. I think I had about a +3 on that one. I could be wrong. But the winner, who's actually local, Deb Dreyfus, who has the same plane as me, a little bit 1 year or 2 years older model, she was able to make it out of some weather that we got stuck behind by an hour. She beat that weather by an hour. So, but it was all good. We made some good decisions. I make my own they give us some timing line plates to look at, and we brief those. And then I make my own notes, and I actually shrink them down and put them kneeboard size. So with some of my own checklist items on what to do. Across the top it's hard to see, but I've got things to do to check off. And my co-pilot has her own checklist that she runs down. So every place we stop, we have to decide if we're going to stay. This is the only way to stop the clock is to fly over a timing line that's just arbitrarily set somewhere on the airport where we can have timers sit. Even though we're using the Bad Elf, we still have manual timers in case something happens. And so the airport authority or the airport manager always approves where that timing line is going to be. And that's how you start and stop the clock. We did have people this year have to divert for weather, put down, the clock keeps ticking. As long as you get to an airport on the race route before that sunset, you won't get disqualified. So we didn't have anybody disqualified, but we had 5 withdrawals during the race this year because of weather. So you write your name on there, and then if you're going to leave, our strategy is we always write it down in case the plane doesn't start or something. This is strategic for the next morning because this is the launch order at 6:30 at sunrise. So, and that can be very important to get out first. So, this is my race partner this year, Susan Bell. She and I raced in, our first race was both in 2010. We raced with different people. We raced together in 11 and 12. Neither of us raced in 13. We raced together in 14 and 16. And then now she's back racing again. I got her current, as a CFI it was great. I got her current, she had quit flying. And so she was able to race with me. We also have a program called Baby Birds. And what we do is we assign a new racer to someone who's raced before, kind of a veteran racer. And this is our Baby Birds from Gaithersburg. The one gal's from Texas, but the plane is in Gaithersburg. They do SARL racing, the Sport Air Racing League. So we had to kind of help them understand they couldn't modify too much. But just fun thing, she won her class in the Oshkosh race this year. But she's got a bin. But it's fun to have somebody and kind of teach them what to do to come along. We get to see the United States at very low levels sometimes. That's why we like to race kind of more out west because there's more D airspace. I crossed the Mississippi 5 times in one race. This year, I think we only crossed it once or twice. Because it curves a lot. So we talked about the briefing and the stops. This is a track. This is in Owatonna, Minnesota, which was our furthest north piece. No, Cadillac, Michigan, I think was further north. But on the Bad Elf, you can see that's the landing over the runway. But the timing lines and our flight path is either to the left or the right of the runway usually to leave space so when people are taking off and landing, we're not flying right over their heads. We do the timing lines at 200 or 300 feet AGL. Sometimes we have to take them up to 500 if there's obstructions. And you can see my track. Usually we have I think we have a quarter of a mile. We have 1325 or something for our waiver. But we set it tighter. We set it about 700 feet to keep the planes tighter in. And the judges will look at planes that are outside of kind of that corridor. So I was pretty tight. I think one was, this one was 300 and this one was right at 600. So, some of the stops are fun, like this one. I don't know if anybody recognizes what that is, but that's an airmail arrow. We got stuck in Newark, Ohio for, felt like 2 days, but it was about overnight and about 4 hours in the morning, waiting for some fog to lift. So they had a really cool, they still have it preserved and fun. So, sometimes we have downtime, we get to do some fun stuff. There's my steak with the onion rings from Josh City, because we were eating out of snack bags, and usually everything's closed and you're exhausted by the time you get to a hotel. And So we're eating hard-boiled eggs and those dusty old like Quaker Oats bars and stuff. So we do it not really for the cash because there's not a whole lot involved, especially since we've broken up the classes. It used to be about $7,500 for first place, plus some additional things that have been donated. This year, I think top prize was like $5,000. So you get leg prizes. If you don't get qualified in the top either 6 or 10 or whatever it is, this year it was the top 6, then everybody else is eligible as for leg prizes. So the top scorers after the people that came in the top 6 would be eligible. So you may win first place on a leg, but actually still score maybe 7th, for that leg overall. But the other top 6 weren't eligible. So, but that doesn't mean like you can really screw up one leg usually. Not really bad, and still place. Like I said, I made a bad decision on, our team, we decided to go early on the first day this year. It cost us the first or second or third place, but we thought it was the safest way to go. But we averaged like 5th or 6th overall on each leg. But then when you average everything out, depending on penalties people got and things like that, we did well enough to get 4th overall. So you get a little cash, you get a plaque, you get, I brought some of my stuff, like I said, the medals for the top placers. Then you get the little leg charms. You get another charm with the race route on it. I didn't bring a plaque, but you get a little plaque with the race route on it too. So it's really nice, and a participation certificate. This is from the banquet this year with our little 4th place ribbons. These are the top placing teams, the top 6 in the competition class this year. And I don't know if I have another picture. I don't think I put it in there, but we had Debbie and Joy are 99s from the DC and Baltimore area. These 2 gals are from Eastern Pennsylvania. We're from here, Frederick. And we had one more team that competed from the Mid-Atlantic region. So we actually did very, very well overall as flyers. So before I get into some more, I wanted to talk about the air derby a little bit. So like I said, this one it's flown the end of September, beginning of October. Registration is going to open up in about 2 weeks. Basics are, and I brought some flyers too you can take, and there's a QR code if you don't want to take the flyer. But essentially you plan a route, minimum of 5, it has to be 5 legs, minimum of 65 nautical miles for each leg, so they can be longer. And the kicker is, one of the legs you have to actually land at an airport. It has to be a standard FAA pattern entry, so you either have to do cross midfield and come over, or midfield to drop in. You can't, no straight ends. And the first year we said, anybody can do it. It can be anything. It can be experimentals, it can be, helicopters, and then we're like, wait a minute, they can hover and sit on the time. So no helicopters, but just about anything else that you've got, you can put it in this derby. So no restrictions. You can also use the same plane for multiple teams, so the flight schools don't have to worry about assigning a single plane to each team. There's no inspections, you just have to prove you've got some insurance. And then they're also, the only thing that we restrict, you can fly the same route, so that's my challenge is I have a route that's been approved. So if people want to go out and we want to fly the same route and have like a little Frederick competition, we can do that. And it's really a lot of fun. It's because it's a prediction run. You send in your prediction of how long it's going to take you to fly, and then that's it. So, really a lot of fun. Like I said, you just have to have a female has to be in the front seat, one of the seat. Some resources. this is, I think I played the trailer for this, Beyond the Powder. That was a documentary that was filmed, and it was a comparison of the old race to the modern day race, to the original race to the modern day race. The original races were flat out speed, but it's called Beyond the Powder. It's available on Amazon, I think. Breaking Through the Clouds is just about the original race, and then Sky Girls is about the first air racers in that first race. It's a great book by Janora Jessen. She just passed away in March, but she was one of the original Mercury 13 pilots. So she wrote several other books. After she got kicked out of the program, she went on to work for Beech, and she flew one of 3 Musketeers that Beechcraft built, and she went around to demo them, and they made her fly in a dress and heels around the whole country. So that was everything. I could talk some more. I didn't want to go too long, but I definitely have, because this is like a 2-hour presentation I usually do. So I wanted to go through it pretty quick, but we can go back and look at the route from this year. Let me see if I can find this year's. I think it was up front, wasn't it? There it is. If anybody wants to talk about what we did, strategy, or any other questions about the race, I want to leave as much time for questions as Brad.
So handicapping is flown at full throttle?
Full throttle.
At 6,000?
6,000 feet density altitude. So we calculate that. If there's an autopilot installed, the autopilot has to be used to keep it nice and smooth. Rudders have to be as centered as possible.
Well, how do you go through the mountains at 6,000?
So that's just for the handicap flight. So you can fly at any altitude you want for the race.
Oh,
so
gotcha,
we spent a lot of time deciding what's the hit for climbing over staying low. And it used to be you didn't really know what was going on. And the wind's aloft, crapshoot anyway. But there's a little more climbing than what used to happen, and they've kind of taken the sport out of it with ADSB. So you know where everybody is. You know what altitude they're at, and we're keeping track of. Okay, well that's a 172, and their handicap is this. Are they catching on us, or are they going behind us? So.
Do you allow experimentals in this class?
In the big race, no. We have done experimentals as kind of a test class, and we need 5 planes to run a valid test, and we only got like 2 one year. So we haven't opened it back up. We're willing to do that, but it's hard because it's hard for us. We don't have any historicals because everybody's plane is so different on the experimentals. So, but on the Derby, you can definitely fly the Derby because it's your own prediction. You're not flying against the handicap.
If you do your handicap with a certain plane and then your plane is going to be out long before the start, can you swap the plane in?
Yeah, you can. And we do have provisions for that. There's just like $100 fee or something. But we have had that happen a couple times with the college teams, and we just have to re-handicap them. So we do our best. We actually had in 2022 on the way to Lakeland, Florida at the start in 22, Auburn University put a plane down in a field, and the university, and the girls were fine, they did a beautiful job, everything perfect. The university brought a plane for them, picked them up, and they thought they were taking them back to Auburn, and the girls were like, no, we'd rather race. So they came to the start, we re-handicapped them, and they went on their merry way, and they actually did very well. But yeah, so that's good. You also, if you lose a teammate, that changes the handicap too. And if we have time, we'll do that. We have a stable of pilots. It's free to register to race. And if you get accepted as a racer, it doesn't cost you anything until you form a team. So if a team forms and then loses a teammate, and it's after race registration closes at the end of March, and we don't race until the middle of June, we can potentially substitute a racer. that's already been qualified. So and we try and match people up too.
So what are the expenses for a racer, like your fuel, your hotel, getting there?
Good question. I almost brought that with me, but with fuel prices going up, it's been a little bit more. But the entry fee for a team of 2 is almost just shy of $1,400. But that goes towards some meals at the start and the terminus and prizes and things like that. And then fuel to get to the race. So like we just had to go to Illinois, but I had to come home from Loveland, and next year I'm gonna have to come home from Spokane. So the fuel can run you, overall, it's anywhere from $5,000 to $8,000. Hotel rooms have become extremely expensive as well. And luckily I had a bunch of points I used this year, but I'm running out of those since I'm retired now. All my points for traveling for work. But yeah, it can get pricey. And then you've got the maintenance of the plane. And some of these folks are renting their planes from a flight school. So, or the school is charging them an hourly rate. But they're also getting college credit usually too. So.
I noticed some of the other years there were points that were quite close along the route.
Yeah.
What?
Let's see if I can find them. Some of these. So.
Like in 14.
In 14, there were some. It's deceiving that Iowa City down to Norfolk. It was still a good distance. So, Pinedale, Wyoming, to Elko was also probably, some of them were, those are probably at least 150 miles.
Oh, were those waypoints to like get through the mountains?
Those aren't waypoints. This race actually, to get through Wyoming, we had to go around some things if we didn't want to climb. And that's what's going to happen in next year's race too. We have to go through a pass because those mountains are like 14,000 feet.
Right.
And I don't think anybody's going to climb to get over them. So yeah, it's this because the way it's squeezed on the map is kind of deceiving. The only one that here from York to Harrisburg, it was a timing point at York, and then we ended up in Harrisburg. So Santa Fe was the same thing. We, from Plainview up to, we stopped, we used a small residential air park as the final timing zone and then went into Santa Fe. For towered airports, the start is great, but for the finish, we've had teams get turned by the tower in prior races, so we no longer allow timing at a towered airport. We do a timing point, like this year it ended up at Guild VOR, which was 30 miles from Loveland, to give the gals a fighting chance to get in. So not have to deal with any shenanigans with the tower. So that was very interesting. You know, we have a remote tower at Leesburg. The only other one that's still operating is in Loveland, Colorado, a remote tower. So, but yeah, so it could be, now we did have in this race, you see we have Sault Ste. Marie on the US side and on the Canadian side. So we required everybody to stop on the US side, file their paperwork, EACA's paperwork, and then cross over, clear customs. They weren't timed between the two spots, and then the race started for them again once they cleared customs. So that was an interesting race, very interesting. They were way up in the middle of nowhere, where, you know, survival if you went down was not real great. But we've had this particular race, we also had to cut out the first 2 legs because of bad weather. So we've had to do that. And we sent them straight across to Bryant. Any other questions?
What are some of the colleges that participate?
Some of the universities, we have Liberty University just down the road, Embry-Riddle, UND, Kent State won the last 2 or 3 years actually for the collegiate class, Ohio State, Auburn, Mankato, Minnesota State, Kansas State, Trying to think of any. I mean, like I said, there's 19 of them, but some are smaller universities. Vaughn College up in New York competes, and then some schools send multiple teams, and then some schools just send the one represent team. Western Michigan, up in Battle Creek, sends a team every year. We have, I think Embry-Riddle holds the record. I think they've been sending people for the last like 25 years, maybe 25, 30 years. Yep.
How many times do you refuel throughout the entire journey?
Refueling, I pick up fuel. Everybody has to start with a full tank of fuel. So for weight and balance, that's why it's usually only teams of 2, possibly 3. I have never seen a team of 4 because with full fuel and luggage and all that stuff. Although we travel very light, we ship a lot of our stuff. But then that's part of the strategy, is how much fuel do you want to take on? So I have 87 usable gallons, so I always try to get past the first stop, because the first stop is a melee, because nobody knows what they're doing, all the first timers, usually half the field's first timers. So we try and get past if we can, and then I will usually stop at every stop. But that was, again, what might have cost me another placing this year was the team that won flew past one of the stops that we thought, I also have a very generous personal minimum, because the last thing I want to do is run out of fuel on this race, being the prior safety officer. And SiriusXM sponsors my uniforms, so I don't want to end up in a field. But they took the chance. They landed with like day VFR minimums. Oh, that's tight, but you can do that, and as long as you're still legal. So the answer is you refuel as much as you need, usually at every stop.
No bladders?
No, you can't. You can't have any. Well, I mean, I guess if you had an STC, you could, but it wouldn't really. Because you're handicapped with the full fuel, you don't want to take on more fuel than you should. Aux tanks don't have to be fueled. Wingtip tanks don't have to be fueled. So we double check all that.
How do you maintain separation between aircraft?
So as long as you're legal outside of that waiver area, the separation is all visual. We all talk to each other. So we haven't had an issue yet. We've had a couple of kids that have come close to each other, and some go-arounds. But we brief that very tightly. That's why the flybys are usually on the left side or the right side of the runway. We only allow dual flybys. So if you think you're going to come up and pass somebody on the while you're doing your flyby, and you can only do those on a timing run. Like when you go out to restart the clock, you're giving way to anybody else coming in. So you can't do dual flybys if you're just doing a restart flyby. We did have a team get disqualified this year because they did a quadruple flyby rather than slow down. So, yeah. You climb, you have to do rule. I mean, like we brief. If you're gonna do multiple flybys or pass somebody, you gotta be in communication. We use 22725. We use an airing, a standard whatever's. We don't use fingers or anything, but we do talk to each other during the entire race and let each other know. And again, we all have ADS-B, so
What's the timing spacing on departure?
It's about 30 seconds. It depends on what the tower thinks is. They need to have that 3,000 feet of separation. So as soon as they can launch us, they launch us. It only takes, usually for 50 planes, it takes under an hour usually.
And so you're landing on each of those airports?
Yeah, at each of these airports, you have the option to stop or to continue, flyby to continue. So again, if you have enough fuel, if you have, let's see, with this race, no, I don't have the one for 2012. We started in Lake Havasu, and we went to down the Route 66 kind of corridor, and we were able to fly by the first stop near White Sands and keep going. to Gallup, New Mexico. So, but it all depends on how much fuel you have. On this race, we did actually knew we were going to have a tailwind coming down from Elko, so we went all the way to this Davis, California, or Dories or something. We did not stop in Klamath Falls. We went all the way down to Pinedale. So this was a timing point, the Doris, because Klamath is a tower airport. That's where what's up there, 35s or 18s or something?
35s.
It's a huge military installation, yeah. And we had to go through Travis's airspace too. They originally weren't happy about it, but Mary Wonder beat them down and got us in there. But yeah, so that's why sometimes there's little short routes there too. So, anything else? Well, I've got race programs. I only brought a couple, but you're more than welcome to look through them or take them. And then some flyers too for the Derby. I really would like to see a big presence with Frederick doing the Derby. And then the race, I am racing next year if my mechanic says the engine's okay. I'm at TBO. But that plane loves to race. It loves to race. So the engine's been really kicking in. So
You need a good mechanic for that?
I do need a mechanic.
She doesn't have one.
Luckily, I sleep with my mechanic, but it might not work for you guys. I think it works. It works out pretty good for me.
Who knows?
All right.
Who knows the name of her airplane? Nobody?
The 150?
The 182,
Oh, FA, yeah.
Yeah,
which the long version.
yeah.
Freaking not.
Team freaking awesome. So we've been that way. So, because of FA, but and also anybody wants to contribute to the Poor Pilots Fund for air racing, I'm more than happy to have you guys sponsor us. But yeah, it's fun. It's great, and if anybody's interested about learning some more, I'm always willing to talk about it.
Last quick question on the Derby time, September to October. It's any one of those days? I
Any
think?
one of those days, so you can pick the perfect day,
Yeah.
so you don't have to worry about weather. And you just have to get it done by the deadline and turn it in. So like I said, we've had people from all over the world. We had a military team managed to figure out how to fly it like in Saudi or something, or Afghanistan, I don't know where they were, somewhere sandy. And they turned it, they were able to get permission and turn in a course. All right, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it.